So I'm currently a PhD student at the MIT Media Lab in a group called Lifelong Kindergarten. And the mandate of the group is to develop technologies and develop environments that enable people of all ages, but particularly young people, to have creative learning experiences. So this is something it's been a thread throughout my life, so that's what drew me to the Media Lab. And one of our big projects is an application called Scratch, which makes it really easy for young people to create their own interactive media. So kids are surrounded by digital media, interactive digital media, but a lot of their engagement is framed around use, consumption, and they have fewer opportunities to engage as producers, as creators, as designers. So we wanted to flip that. How can we make it really easy for kids to create it? So that's sort of what provoked some of the work around Scratch. And so then with Scratch, you can create a game, a story, an animation, whatever you want, and share it in this large online community. So just like on YouTube, how you can share videos, the Scratch website, which was launched, I guess now in May 2007, is a place where kids are posting like millions of projects. We've almost hit the 2 million project mark with Scratch. And so when I look at that, it made me think of my own experiences growing up. I've always had this fascination with computers and with technology, and I really wanted that to be a thread that I pursued throughout my life, this idea of like, what does it mean to engage with these technologies? How can we make these technologies available to more young people, particularly through these design roles? Both my parents were kind of technology conservative. I guess it's not like they were crazy digital people. But my father, sort of when home computers were initially sort of coming on the market, he's like, well, this seems interesting, we'll bring one home, we'll see what happens. He had no interest in engaging with it. My mother had no interest in engaging with it. But it was sitting in our basement. I just became obsessed with it. And so that's really sort of like that was the start of it for me, was this space to explore and to play and create. And I was using a basic paint editor to make my own pictures. I was playing games. It seemed like a really fun thing to be doing. But after high school, that's not what I did. So I was a music major first, actually. And I didn't even know that computing was something that people studied. And so I did music for a few years, and I'd always been kind of a big math geek. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to study math instead. And a friend of mine said, you don't want a math degree, you should look at computer science as an area of study. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing that you could study. And so I ended up going into a computer science math program. And again, it just was like such a fascinating area of study for me. All of this mystery around technology. I enjoyed interacting with computers, but I didn't really understand how they worked. And I loved the demystification process that was computer science. And I felt really empowered to ask new questions, different questions about technology around me. So it was incredibly empowering to be able to see the technological world around me and not just take it for granted. I could say, like, why does it work that way? How does that work that way? And I could answer some of those questions. So a lot of my work is focused on, well, how can I enable other people to be able to ask questions? So in the first couple of years of Scratch, I spent a lot of time talking with young Scratchers, and one of the things I would ask them was like, how did you find out about Scratch? And for a lot of them, they're like, my mom showed me, my dad showed me, my aunt, my uncle, whoever. What do? They're computer scientists, they're computer engineers. These are kids who were probably going to have good technology experiences one way or another. So just before coming to the Media Lab, I had been at an ed school. And I was really fascinated with the relationship that teachers and schools had through technology. So I said, what would it look like if we tried to make greater connections to schools and Scratch? Because that might be a way of broadening participation. That might be a way of reaching beyond just the kids who were probably going to have good technology experiences. And so that's been a main focus of my work, actually, is working with teachers to let them have that sort of comfort and that exploratory and that investigative approach to technology, that it's okay. It's okay to not know everything. If you're engaged in a design activity like creating a game with Scratch, it's not fun if you already know all the answers or if everyone's making exactly the same thing. So how can we make it a space where you can explore and develop as a creative thinker? Again, relating it back to sort of the big mission of Lifelong Kindergarten is that we want people to develop as creative thinkers, because the biggest problems in the world are not going to be solved by you know, like this is the problem, the answer is in the back of the book. You're going to have to be creative, you're going to have to think of lots of different ways of solving the problem. And if you have no opportunities to practice that sort of design approach to the world, you know, it's a habit of mind, it's a perspective, it's a way of thinking about yourself. And if you never get opportunities to practice it, then it's unlikely that you're really going to draw on that as a core practice in later life. I'm constantly disappointed by the way in which teachers are portrayed, and not just because I used to teach. It's not purely a self-interested thing, but you know, think of all of the things that brought teachers to the profession that they're in. You know, every teacher I have met has this core commitment to supporting the learning of young people, and I think there's like bureaucratic things. There are just like all sorts of things that interfere and impinge on them achieving those dreams. And so I think providing spaces of learning for teachers and treating them like professionals is just a key thing that we constantly need to strive for. So in my work, I try and create learning environments and learning opportunities for teachers that value them as learners, you know, and let them recapture that sense of wonder and let them think about the potential for their students. I think everyone, you know, no one has enough time to do everything they want, but there are so many demands on teachers that it's not surprising that they don't get to do everything that they want to do. So whatever we can do to support them, I'm very passionate about. Like, how can we create those opportunities for teachers as well? Two big things happen. So connecting, obviously, to other people. So, you know, this set of 12 really awesome people got together, and we had these amazing mentors with us to provide guidance. So there's sort of a person connecting thing happening, which was really exciting. But even more exciting than that, and obviously this is connected to the people who were there, connecting of ideas. So, you know, I mean, I'm at MIT, I'm at the Media Lab, and I get to interact with all sorts of interesting people, but to get sort of outside of your comfort zone and meet new people who are thinking about the same sorts of ideas that you are, but are coming from very different disciplines or coming from very different approaches, that's been really very powerful. So these intellectual connections and personal connections have been, I'd say that was sort of like the biggest thing for me this week. But then that led to the other sort of main activity, I think that, and this was a theme that kept coming up again and again, I don't know if it's already come up, this idea of translating, because we do come from very different disciplines. So even if we have this sort of shared core commitment, there is some translation work to be done of like, I call it this thing, you call it that thing, so doing that mapping, doing that translating. So I'd say connecting and translating are the two big activities that we've been engaged in this week. Our trip to USC was really powerful yesterday. So Holly Willis was one of the mentors this week, and I was in a small group interaction with her, and I'm just so impressed with the work she does. But it was really powerful to be sort of on her home turf and see the work that she's doing. And again, related to what I just said about translating, there's so much overlap between the work that we're doing in lifelong kindergarten and my research and the work that they're doing. It feels like we're on these sort of like parallel tracks, so I was really excited to be there. I felt like it made this connection in this very physical way for me that was very powerful. So I think I'm going to be unpacking. I mean, there was so much that happened this week that I think my head is going to be buzzing for the next several weeks. But that was like particularly powerful for me to be just sitting in Holly Willis's space and thinking about these ideas with her and having these conversations with other people. So I wanted to talk to people like me. So I wanted to find people who shared the same core commitments. I love being at the Media Lab. It's a phenomenal place. But it's characterized, one of the ways in which it's characterized is that it's made up of a bunch of different research groups. So there are some people who are making sort of novel prosthetics. There are people who are making robots. So our research group is sort of one of the only groups that's really focused on the sort of theme of digital media and learning. So I really wanted to connect with other people, and I've been to I attended the 2 previous DML conferences, and it was like being with family, you know. I was so excited to have these interactions with people, and so when it was raised as a possibility of having an intensive week with a small group of people who share all of the same passions that I do, I was like, I can't pass it up, which is basically what I wrote in my application. I was like, I want to connect with these people in a very deep way. And even though we come from very different perspectives, you know, I think we all share this desire to develop better understandings of, what is the digital, what is media, what is learning. So it's been fantastic, and it has exceeded my expectations. Well, in the short term, I'm going to be at the Media Lab for a while longer, so I'm getting towards the end of my program, but I still have, my PhD to write, my dissertation to write. And then beyond that, I'm not sure. For a long time, I wanted an academic job, and that's still the case, but particularly in sessions like this, I see all sorts of different types of opportunities and different spaces I could imagine myself in. So I think there's a lot, it's opened new questions to ask. I came in with a set of questions, I got some answers, but I also am leaving with an enormous number of new questions to ask, so I'm really excited.